Victory. Christmas Eve, 1933. While our elders listened to the sermon and sang carols on Birchwood Hill, we slipped away to work our mischief at Abnack Pond. We seized the moment as Uncle Gideon, arms lifted in praise, lifted his eyes as well, addressing heaven, or at least the rafters, with a voice of gladness. For the comforts, dear friends, of our most prosperous associations, one with another, in this our beloved, time-honoured, peaceful habitation. Under the baritone ripple of Uncle Gideon's Christmas Eve admonitions, we moved away from the warm, glowing church and slipped down Birchwood Hill. As the voice rose to the fevered pitch of its sermonal ecstasy, "Let us rejoice!" we tramped a path through deep snow, making a short cut to the bridge. Under the fading strains of the choir, it came upon a midnight clear. We crossed over to Meadside. As the congregation joined, peace on earth, goodwill to men, we began our trek across the frozen fields to Abnack Pond. He was there, a grey shadow, alone in the cloudy moonlight, as the snow began to fall. Silent, we slid among the birches, slipped among willows, faces whipped and stinging. And then, in the gathering storm, it began. "Ooh," wailed Henry from deep in the dark birch grove. Gamaliel cocked his head, listening, black eyes peering into the thickening swirl of snow. "Save me," Henry moaned. Nate was in the willows. "Gamaliel, it is you, the chosen one." Pete was farther up, crying downwind, "Lift the curse, Gamaliel, save me." At the edge of the pond, Gamaliel turned, searching for the sounds. Slipping through the willows, they tormented him, calling, wailing, throwing stones out to the ice to confuse him. "It is I, Marguerite Lapointe. Help me, Gamaliel." He turned faster now, abrupt, afraid, a phantom in the snow, and suddenly I must save him. "Gamaliel!" I cried, but it only frightened him more. He moved now, a grey form obscuring in the snow, slipping down the bank in his confusions, sliding out onto the ice. In the swirling, whistling snow, I could barely make him out as he spun to get his bearings, slipping on the ice. The wailing was the sound of hungry wolves, my cousins in frozen willows and ghostly birches. "Stop!" I screamed. "He doesn't know the way!" But they only increased their howling, the sounds whipping round with the wind, until weary, too cold, they were gone. Through the storm, I saw Gamaliel scrambling on the ice, desperate, moving fast, in the wrong direction, out toward the thinning ice and the falls. "Stop!" I screamed, running, falling, sliding down the bank until my feet struck the hard, slick surface of the pond. "Gamaliel, stop!" I cried, my voice whirling back upon me in the wind. In a frenzy, I crawled along the ice, clawed my way through frozen willows, frantic to keep abreast of him, to reach him before it was too late. When I heard the crack, I froze. As if in awful sympathy, the storm winds ceased, and in the sudden silence I felt, then heard, the deeper, more terrifying sound of the falls. "Gamaliel!" I screamed. The winds resumed, fury increasing, and I saw him, a grey shadow falling, slipping from sight. Ripping off my scarf, I thrust myself forward, making a dive on my belly across the ice, crushing my lungs, stopping far short of the desperate shadow thrashing in black water at the edge of the ice. Gasping for breath, I crept forward, reaching. "Gamaliel!" I gasped, throwing out my scarf. "Here!" But the storm and the falls drowned my voice. Reckless, I spun round, sliding on my back feet first, toward Gamaliel, clinging to the edge of the ice. Bracing on my elbows, I slid, the freezing water rising up past my boots to my knees, the water rising to my waist. I pushed my thoughts out toward him, imagined him grabbing my boots, holding fast, imagined his relief, willed to myself the strength I would need to pull us both to safety. And then I felt the crack under my back and down to my feet. Lifting my head in horror, I saw that he was gone. I knew that I must save myself to have any hope of saving him. Instantly, I flipped over, crawling in a frenzy for the bank, my wet clothes weighing me like lead, the ice cracking fast behind me. A frozen blade in my chest, I swam through ice to the shore, up the bank, swam in a nightmare of swirling snow through the birch grove across the bridge and up the hill, screaming for help. Silent night, holy night, sleep in heavenly peace, they were singing, deaf to my wind-wrapped cries. Then, unaware of how I travelled, I was under the tower as the bells pealed the end of the service, the sound ringing in my frozen bones. "Help!" I choked, bursting through the heavy doors. "He's in the pond!" They moved as one to the rescue, not stopping to ask who, lanterns appearing to split the white dark night. Under the tower, the sexton began the toll of alarm. They found him wedged in a ragged outcrop on the mead side of the centre falls, risking their lives to save him, lashing themselves to the rope, a human chain fighting the freezing current and the slippery rocks. My father in the lead. A shout went up as my father reached him, bracing himself in the icy stream to lift him free. Another shout as my father laid him limp across his shoulder and turned to make the torturous journey back. I watched, wrapped in Uncle Gideon's coat, forcing my lungs to take in frozen air, my clothes like a shroud of ice weighing my limbs. I watched as in a dream, scarcely knowing how I had come to this place, as a line of men, Uncle Tim and Uncle Gideon, nearest father on the rope, fought the water and the storm, pulled with their might to hold him steady across the most treacherous point, where the current burst free to plunge over the ledge into the bottomless pool below. And then, in an awful moment, they were gone, father and his burden, footing lost on the rocks, slipping into the black water, disappearing from view. Frozen in swirling snow I stood, the shrieking all around me, every man in Old Bell Falls running for the rope, pulling, hauling, shouting into the wind, no possibility of surrender. Frozen, I felt a gentle weight upon my head, across my shoulders, my mother wrapping me in a quilt. And then a mighty shout, as my father reappeared from the depths, tossing his head clear of the frigid water, grasping for a fingerhold on slippery rock. "Thank God," my mother prayed as my father, Gamaliel secure upon his back, was pulled from the terrible deep. Held fast at my mother's side, I watched my father fall to his knees and commence to work. "It's no use," I heard someone say, "he's gone." "No!" I broke away, fighting through the crowd to stand beside my father as he worked to bring Gamaliel back. An eternity he worked, the townsfolk huddling round, until, exhausted, my father fell back. And now Victoria came running, wild down the hill, through the foot-deep snow. Wild like the winter wind, breath sent out hard before her, with a wail like a crack in the earth. White gown whipping in the storm, head and hands bare, ice tears on her cheeks, she ran to him, fell to her knees, seized his hand in the sudden hush. Even the wind laid down its fury. And then she called him back. "Gamaliel," she commanded. At his feet I watched as life came into his face. All around me I heard the gasp of the congregation, heard the wonder at the movement of his frozen eyes, the flood of water pouring warm from his lungs. My heart broken, I fell to my knees beside my weeping father. While weeping, my mother wrapped Victoria in her cloak. Under the clearing sky, the weeping spread through the congregation, as Victoria, still kneeling in snow, raised her son to her heart. For a moment there was only weeping and the toll of the warning bell, until the message reached the church on Birchwood Hill and the Christmas peal resumed. Peace, goodwill toward men. Just before dawn, shivering in my bed, I saw my father standing at my door. "I can't get warm," I told him. "I know, son," he said, and he was shivering too. "Come, let us take old Luther to the fire." We found him standing, nowhere to go, seeing nothing, in the darkness of his room. Without protest, he let us lead him slowly to his chair. I wrapped him warm in Rebecca's old quilt, while my father stoked the fire. Presently the fresh logs caught, and the flames were leaping, flickering shadows across my father's hands and face. The heat from the fire reached my skin, and I was aware of my cold bones. My father turned to warm his back, motioning me into his arms. We stood there, locked, silent, my head against his chest. I listened to his heart. In the yard, the cock crowed. Soft light touched the eastern window. The Christmas fir, dressed with tinsel and wooden angels, was a massive shadow in the corner of the room. I was warm now, and my father released me. The fire crackled, sending an ember onto the hearth. My father stooped, and with his bare hand returned the ember to the grate. In his chair, old Luther stirred, turning his face toward the coming light. The first rays streamed through the window, flooding the braided rug in the center of the smooth oak floor, the light growing, at each point touching upon something a Howe had made: the long oak table, the maple chairs, a knotted shawl draped over the horsehair sofa, an embroidered linen cloth. In the growing light my father knelt, gentle, at his father's side, a stronger arm around his father's shoulders, a hand upon his father's knee. "Christmas Day, old Luther," he whispered, the sound of tears in his voice. No movement, but a change in Luther's face, as if suddenly he knew we were there. In the firelight, his old eyes glistened, a message from his captive soul. "Mother," was all he said. Strength leaving, Luther slackened. Weeping, I laid my hand upon my father's shoulder, as weeping, he lifted his father's hand in his. "Tell her," my father tried, watching the glistening eyes close. "Tell her," he said, his eyes upon the quiet face, "it is finished." And old Luther, the patchwork falling from his shoulder, drew a last breath and was still. The sun rose bright in the clear blue sky over dazzling Old Bell Falls. The town awoke to the utter stillness of winter morning, the vast expanse clothing the landscape in white, so that no spot remained upon the earth, no stain, no mark of strife. From the border of the woods above the high pasture, down to the edge of Abnack Pond, Ephraim's wall was the merest ripple in the virgin snow. Soon the old church bells would begin to sound, ringing in Christmas Day, for the first time in nearly 100 years, to greet a town without division from their tower on Birchwood Hill. Fortunate we are when we are marked in youth by truth. Such a fortunate one was I, when I saw a holy season, redeemed by the healing of hearts.
This is the conclusion of Old Bell Falls by Evangeline Ivers, narrated by Leslie Norris.